Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here with my review of The Eternals, the latest Marvel movie, of course, introducing a whole new cast of superheroes and pseudo-villains, I guess. I enjoyed it. I actually thought it was pretty good. I know that this has been getting mostly negative. I'd say mixed, but I feel like most of what I've heard is that it wasn't really that good. Um, I thought it was fine though. I think one of the biggest reasons is definitely the fact that it's almost 3 hours. And you can tell. Like, you can tell when you're watching it. And for me, it wasn't the worst. It wasn't like, oh man, it's like, oh, checking my watch. But I'm like, I could see people feeling that way because there's definitely parts where the movie, has its highs and lows or whatever. But for me, I enjoyed it because I was like, okay, I like learning about these new characters. I like how they do it because with it being nearly a 3 hour film. I felt like they didn't waste time where it was like it's nearly 3 hours, but you only learn about like three, like three and a half of the Eternals. It was like no, you actually get an understanding of all of the Eternals and who they are and how they feel. And I was like, okay, at the very least, they did that and they, excuse me, took the time, even though still a long movie, which I can totally understand why people might be like, I would have preferred if it was more succinct. I liked it though. I don't know why. In all honesty, I was like, I like the fact that it was a calmer movie and stuff like that. Like it certainly doesn't feel like any of the other Marvel films where it's like, okay, like this. It's an epic thing that's happening, of course, but it's not like, oh, it's the Avengers doing this or, any of the random Avengers characters in their own films doing this very specific high octane thing. It definitely lets it breathe. It feels, honestly, it kind of feels like you're watching a show a little bit because of the length of the film. Like, you get to understand the characters and, some of the stuff that they do. So for me, I was like, I'm okay with this. I actually like how they handled it. I enjoy, of course, the powers of the characters. Everybody has like their different abilities and stuff. I thought it was pretty sweet. I was like, this is cool. I enjoyed their abilities. Um, the deviants were fine. They did something that was pretty cool in there that I don't think we'll see again, which is kind of unfortunate because they did like the one thing that they did. I think that was super unique that I felt was like, oh, that's probably like the most interesting kind of plot throughout the film. They don't really do much with, and that I would say is a bit disappointing. Which you'll know it once you see it. And I was like, that I wish they did. I just felt like it didn't end the way that I wanted it to. It was kind of one of those things where it's like, there's definitely like two stories happening. And it's like, I feel like the story that doesn't get like the main focus probably could have been the main focus. And I think it would have made for a better film if that was how it went. Just because of some of the stuff they kind of dive into with the characters as the story progresses. Especially once you start to learn a couple things about some of the characters kind of down the line throughout the film. And I was like, I feel like that could have definitely made for like a bigger heart, of the story where it's like, oh, that's such a unique way of kind of looking at this concept of who the Eternals are and the Deviants and the Celestials and kind of the rules that they are kind of bound by. Of course, not um, interfering with humans and war and all that stuff, which is why they of course don't do anything during any of the Avengers films or any of the the last 10 years of the MCU. So it was like, okay, like it was interesting how they kind of played around with their place in the world and what their mission of destroying the deviants and why they're still on Earth and all that stuff. I thought they did a good job, which they should. To like 2 hours and like 45 minutes, they should explain all that stuff, and I felt like they did. So once again, that kind of balance where I was like, I enjoy this. I like it feeling super fleshed out, but it's also the first time you met any of these people, and if you just don't attach to them, I can see why people don't like the movie because once again, it's 2 hours and 45 minutes, and you get to know these characters, and if you're just like, I just don't care, then you just won't like the movie. I feel like that's how it is, and I'm like, I can see why not everybody's gonna just like every character, but for me personally, I was like, I enjoyed it. I like the different characters. I like obviously the powers are just cool, but I like the way that they kind of go through the story and say like this is who they are as individuals, but also as a team, as the Eternals. Like how obviously you have a team dynamic, much like the Avengers. You have to have characters bounce off each other. They can't just be like this person's cool and this person's cool in their own little way, and then somehow that doesn't clash. Or like they never talk about how they're different or anything. So they definitely do that, and I enjoyed it pretty much the whole way through. I thought it was pretty cool. They do some stuff towards the end where I was like, I could also see why this. It was just like a thing that it was kind of like it felt a little cliche, and it was just like, But at the same time, it wasn't 100%. Like it wasn't bad. It didn't like destroy anything. But I was like, I could definitely pick like this one specific thing in the whole movie where I was like, that I could see people being like, okay. And I'm just like, yeah, it felt like a little bit old school, like kind of movie tropey, like just a little bit. And I was like, yeah, I could see people not kind of being too up on that very specific thing that happens. But all in all, I say it's worth seeing. I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty good. I don't think it really is for every. It certainly doesn't. It's not like, oh man, it's MCU style. It is definitely not. Like even Shang-Chi being a brand new character and stuff, felt more like an MCU film, which is something that I did hear about this, where it was like it doesn't feel like it kind of fits with the rest of the MCU. It kind of doesn't. And maybe that's why I enjoyed it, where I was like, I like that it's so different. It's definitely not like they have jokes, but I assure you, if you're going into this like, oh man, MCU action comedy, let's see what happens, you're not getting that. You are gonna have some jokes. There's definitely jokes in there, and there's actually quite a bit of action. Once again, there should be. 3-hour film, but I like, the amount of action I felt was justified, but the story is definitely more heartfelt than it is comedic, where it was just like, this is what's happening, this is who we are. Characters that have lived for thousands upon thousands of years. It's interesting. I like the concept of what they did, but it definitely doesn't feel like a classic MCU film. I think it's better for that, personally. At least with the story they told. I mean, it could feel outside of the MCU and just be a crappy movie. I don't think it was. So, obviously everyone has a different opinion. But I enjoyed it. I think it's worth checking out. It is almost 3 hours, though. And it's one of those things where I'm like, with it being much slower paced, if you like that sort of thing, I think you'll enjoy the film more than most people really have. And especially if you don't go in with kind of a classic MCU sort of outlook on things. Like, Shang-Chi, sure. Spider-Man next month, absolutely. But this movie is definitely like, if you pluck it out, it's like, okay, that's a really fun comic book movie. But it definitely doesn't feel like, MCU. It feels like its own thing for sure. And like I said, I like it for that. I understand why not everybody does, though. And also, it's almost 3 hours long. And it could have been shorter, for sure. But for me personally, I was like, I don't mind it being as long as it is. Because I felt like, there's always something in, honestly, nearly every single film ever, where you could be like, that little moment here and there could probably be taken out. And they have those in here where it's like, at least stuff could, at the very least, could just be shortened a little bit. But all in all, I still really liked it. I still enjoyed the film. I wouldn't say I'd see it twice, but that's only due to the fact that it's so long. I wouldn't pay to see it twice, at least, just because it's super long. And in all honesty, I don't think there's not many MCU films where I was like, oh, I really want to see that. So honestly, like Infinity War and Endgame were like the last ones where I really felt that way. Shang-Chi, just because it was coming on Disney Plus, I was like, that's amazing, and I can't wait to watch it again. But I'll just wait. I wasn't gonna pay twice. But this one, I could see it being a one and done. But I do think it's a great introduction to these characters, and I personally think it's worth seeing, especially if they stick with these characters, which, considering some of the ties they have comic book wise, I'm fairly certain they will. And also, it's been a long time since they've abandoned anything. Like, I was worried, honestly, going into this. I was like, okay, remember when the Inhumans was a thing? And they're like, we're going to make a movie for the Inhumans. And then like, we scrapped that. We're going to make a TV show for the Inhumans. And that was like one of the worst ideas they've ever had. And they're like, that's like the one thing that was just like an absolute failure. I know people don't really care much for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but it is amazing and you're missing out. I'm just saying. But Inhumans, you're not. I mean, it only got one season anyway because it was something. It was something. I gave it a shot. I had to watch it though, just to see what they did. But yeah, that was weird. But I was worried this was going to be like that for a little bit. I was like, okay, I hope this isn't this way. And that was mostly because of what I'd been hearing. But I think it's good. I think you'll enjoy it. But know that it's a long film, and it's definitely slower paced compared to most of the other ones. And I don't think it's done in the bad way. It's just that it's one of the, I'd say it's one of the rare moments where an ensemble cast actually gives time to every single character. Like, everyone has like a moment to where you're like, okay, this is who they are. This is who they were, back then, because once again, they've been on Earth for thousands of years. This is who they used to be. This is, when they were part of a team. This is when they split up. This is what they do with their powers or don't do with their powers, or all that stuff. They kind of give every single person, like, at least, a little chunk of time. And I was like, because of that, I think that's why I like the movie so much. It feels like all the downtime is introducing these characters in a way that I felt was actually relevant to them. And once again, if you don't care about the characters at all, you just kind of hate them anyway, it'll just make the movie worse. But for me, I was like, okay, I'm invested in this. I like to see what, how these characters progress throughout the film, and seeing how they progress, from who they were to where they are now in the timeline. So I like it. I say check it out. Of course, we'll be getting into spoilers officially right now. So full on spoilers. Go see the movie. Come back. Post-credit sequence. That was something. Blade showed up. I was hoping we get a little bit more than that, and I was a little upset. I also knew Blade was going to show up because Tyrone Magnus had a thing and he had Blade, and I was like, cool. Spoilers for that. That was sweet. I wish we got to see him. That's what I was hoping for. Because I was like, I would love to actually like see what Blade looks like. And it was funny. Right before I went into the movie, I was like, man, when is Blade coming out? Because, like, we don't know when Blade's coming out. Fantastic Four, those are like the two ones where it's like, we know they're happening. At least we know who's playing Blade. Like, we have no clue about Fantastic Four. So I knew Blade was coming first. I was like, man, we haven't heard much about Blade. We don't know like a timeline or anything like that. I'm like, yeah, where's Blade? What's happening with Blade? So that was actually kind of cool. I was like, okay, something's happening there. Kit Harington's character, whoever the dude's, whatever the guy's name is, he's interesting because I'm like, I don't know what's happening with this dude. As soon as he was, there at the end of the movie, he's like, it turns out my family history is complicated. I'm like, oh, so he's in the MCU now. Because I'm like, he could have just been like the love interest that was in the movie once. And then, that's it. And he was like, complications. And I was like, MCU character. He's like 100% he's in the MCU now. So good for him. Good for Harry Styles as well. I think I'd heard that, but I wasn't 100% sure. And then he shows up and he's Arrows, which is also why I have like the one thing I could think to pick out as an item that I own. The Infinity Gauntlet for Thanos. But Eros has shown up officially, the brother of Thanos. They also did, I think technically his name is Pip. Pip the Troll. I didn't see that one coming. And I swear, Patton Oswalt is in like everything MCU. He was all over the place. If you never saw Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., he's in like, I'm pretty sure he's in every single season of that show in one way or another. At least once they introduce his character, he's in like, I think literally every season until the final one. At least in like one episode or something. So that was funny. I was like, man, he just stays in the MCU. So that was cool. Arrow showing up at the end there. Crazy ending in general. Like, first off, they turned an Eternal, or they turned a Celestial into Marvel, which was super sweet. I was like, okay, that's really interesting. It's just the hand of the Celestial just coming out of the water. I was like, that's in the MCU now. They'll just have that as a monument. And then the Celestial comes down at the end of the movie like, let me talk to you three, because like we need to have a conversation because you just pissed me off. And they talk about judgment, which this specific character is the person, if you remember in Guardians of the Galaxy, Ashram, I believe is the name. That is the exact character. I think they showed him as purple before, so I think technically all the I don't know too much about the Celestials and Eternals. I know like kind of the basic things here and there. I do think technically they all do judgment or whatever on the different planets, but it seemed like that was meant to represent like the exact one, because they do have different costumes. They all have like the same sort of eyes and stuff, but he did kind of look like the one from Guardians of the Galaxy, but his color was red instead of purple, so probably a different one. But I thought that was cool. It was like, I'll pass judgment. I was like, okay, let's, they're doing a lot of stuff right now. I'm like, they're talking about like bringing judgment down from the Celestials, and then they're still doing Krang, that's Ninja Turtles. What the F is that dude's name? All I can think is Krang now. All I got is Ninja Turtles. But the dude who's doing the time travel. Kang. There it is. I knew it was close. Kang the Conqueror, not Krang. So they're doing like time travel. We got Spider-Man coming up with multiple dimensions. They're going crazy with this right now. So I'm excited. I would love to see what happens. Who knows when the Eternals are actually going to return, as far as the characters who are off in space, and then the characters who have been taken from Earth and then warped, which was a very cool effect, and just kind of warped away. Also, I don't know if anybody else caught this, during that whole madness and stuff, I don't know why they had this dude do this, but it was so funny to me. Everyone's freaking out like, oh, did you see that? Like, the woman, she just disappeared. The dude came in. There was a dude, he was like in the bottom right corner. He came in and he stole the guy's bike, who was like, were the two people that got up from the bench. They were talking like, are you okay and stuff. That dude stole their bike and just left. And I was like, why'd they put that in the movie? That was so funny to me. I'm like, he's stealing that guy's bike. Like, because he was looking, and then he, like, grabbed the bike, and he got on it, and I was like, he just stole that dude's bike. It was really weird. I was like, I don't know why they put that in the movie, but it made me laugh, because I was like, he's stealing that bike right now. So, weird moment, but I just wanted to point that out, because I was like, they didn't have to add that, but it was funny to me, and so I'm glad they did. But I like that ending sequence where it was just, like, the heavens part. I thought the movie was honestly just going to end, and it was just going to be like, boom, here we go, and the clouds are going to do that, and it was like, surprise, see you in Spider-Man. I honestly thought it was about to happen where they're going to end on like this crazy cliffhanger, and then it was going to be like, actually, Spider-Man's going to be even crazier than you thought, but it was like, no, they grabbed them, teleported off-world, and then they're just gone. It was weird that he didn't grab Sprite, but I guess technically because she's human by the end of the film, that's why he doesn't end up doing that. But, he grabs the three of them, and then he's like, poof, and then they're just gone, and apparently it's been weeks. So they've been gone and separated to whatever part of the universe. So that was interesting. I'm excited to see whatever they end up doing with the Eternals. I think we're probably going to have to wait a while to see kind of the next step of that. But considering they do introduce Eros at the end, I'm excited to see where they go. Like, how soon are they going to follow up with the Eternal stuff? With it being so far out there, will we get to see some of this stuff kind of come into play? Like, we have Guardians of the Galaxy. That's the easiest answer, where it's like they'll be in space, they'll come across somebody or whatever. So that's the easy answer. But ultimately, we just have to wait and see how they end up tying all this stuff together. But love the ending. Thought it was really cool. The fighting at the end I thought was really sweet. I don't remember anybody's name except for Sprite and Icarus. That's all I got. And Athena, not Athena. That's literally all I got. Can't remember anybody else's name. So this is going to be real bad, but this is how it's going to be. I like the action. The woman who had super speed, who is also the actress that was in The Walking Dead, blew my mind. I never realized that was her until I actually saw the movie, and I was like, that is super cool. Good for her, because I like her in The Walking Dead. And also, you never, like, it's very rare to see, like, an actor that's mute, that, doing sign language in a film, and then they, like, she was on The Walking Dead. She's the main character on The Walking Dead, and now she's in the MCU. And so I was just super happy about that. I was like, I didn't realize that was her in any of the trailers. And so I was super happy when I realized that was her, because I just like her in The Walking Dead. And I was like, also, just a rare thing. So I was like, that's super cool. It was great to see her. Love the visuals for her having super speed. I thought that was great. The scene where she runs across the world. Love that sequence. It was super short, but super speed, that's the point. But I thought it looked great. I really enjoyed that. All the action was really good. I'm just going to call him by his actual name, but Brian Tyree Henry. Him, like, being able to create all sorts of stuff, I thought that was really cool. I like that he made the steam engine, and they were like, it's too early, we can't do that. The fact that he gave up on humanity because he helped advance them to the point where we made the A-bomb, I thought that was really good. And that was, once again, a part of what I liked about the story, where it was, they would do kind of the flashbacks, and they would jump back and forth. Druig, I thought, had a really interesting moment where, because they do reference the fact that someone died, and I was like, oh, I assume that he was the one who died, but they say at one point, I think Icarus is like, one of us hasn't died in like 7,000 years or something, which I think was meant to be a hint that he remembered stuff, because when he said that, I was like, oh, so Druig is probably the one who died. And then it was like, no, everybody's fine. So where do you get that 7,000 years from if that was all of them? So I thought that was weird, and I was like, I think that was meant to be like that little hint that he actually remembers stuff. But at the same time, they've been on Earth for more than 7,000 years. So it was really a weird line, because I'm like, if none of them died, what is he even referencing? And if he has memories, that should have been a moment where he got questioned, like, well, what are you talking about? None of us are dead yet. Unless one of them almost died or did die, but was technically brought back by Salma Hayek's character, because, of course, once again, I don't remember any names. So, interesting line, where I'm just going to assume that was meant to be a hint, but at the same time, it's weird that he wasn't questioned when that was brought up if none of them actually died. So I thought that was weird. But I like the flashbacks. I like getting to see all the different characters and their stories. It kind of kicks off pretty quick. Like, I thought they were going to do much more of a lead up. They do the whole, text sprawl and everything. And then, of course, they put on their costumes. They come down to Earth. She gives the kid the gold blade. And then, boom, they defeat one of the deviants. Decent little sequence. Rip that thing apart. Here's a little gold blade, and then they, of course, jump through time, and it's like, oh, that's that thing I gave that kid when we, like, first got to Earth. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. Go through, teacher, Kit Harington, all that good stuff. Crazy earthquake, disintegrate the thing. See some powers, we see Sprite, we get to see what their abilities are super fast. And then they jump right into the action, and then here comes Icarus. He can fly, he can shoot lasers. They all have super strength, but I guess he's got, like, super duper strength. And then also the one dude who would punch had like super duper strength, because that was like his special thing. I don't know, because they all had super strength. It was weird how they defined it, where it's like, you're the strongest one. So I'm like, so he's got extra super strength. Like, that's really what it was. Because I'm like, some of them seem to not have super strength at all. But like, he laser beamed Druig at the end of the movie, and then he came back. So it was confusing to be like, I don't understand really where the power balance is, where they're like, Icarus is the strongest because he can fly and shoot lasers. And I assumed he had super strength. But I feel like it was just the flying thing that made him more special, because everyone else seemed to also have super strength. But once again, super duper strength and then super duper duper strength. I don't know. It was just really weird, because I'm like, it was confusing for me to understand the balance, like how they could actually kill each other. Aside from like the one time he lasered somebody and actually like hit them and hurt them. And I was like, okay, so they can be wounded by that. But then once again, Druig was like ultra laser beamed. So it's, little things where I would notice, like, I don't know how that works. Because I'm like, I figured Druid wasn't dead. But in my head, I was like, he should be dead, though, right? Because he got laser beamed. And when they were being laser beamed, like Kumail Nanjiani's character, when he, like, dived and he got hit in the arm, he was wounded. And, like, I assume the suits aren't, like, that armor. I don't know. Like I said, the question's worth bringing up, I feel. Because I was like, the power balance on how they get attacked and hurt each other seemed way off. Like, kind of throughout the film, like, how they were hurting each other just seemed weird to me. But still fun. Still like the story. Still like the action of the characters. And seeing how they split up and everything like that. And Druid kind of taking all the people and leaving. And being like, okay, well, you guys should all kind of take off. And then, of course, as we go throughout the film, we find out that Icarus is the one that killed Selma Hayek. And it was because he always, he believes in the Celestial still. And it was like, I like what we're doing here, but, like, I still got to go with, top dog. And so he just drops her down in the cliff. And then she gets killed by the deviant that can absorb powers, which is pretty interesting. And that, I would say, is, like, the one thing that, unfortunately, doesn't go as far as I feel like it could have to make even an even greater impact, because I felt like they had a lot there where I was like, man, I wish they spent more time on this, but it kind of went. I mean, admittedly, they did have to stop a Celestial from being born, but I was like, man, it almost would have been cooler if they just couldn't beat him, but he also couldn't kill them, so he ends up making an escape, because it's like, all right, well, if I can't kill them all right now, I should just leave so that they can do this. Because if this thing comes out, I'm going to die on this planet too. And I was like, dang, I wish they didn't kill him off, because that would have been a cool recurring villain. And also the mental aspect of that, where he has the power, at least two powers of, the Eternals. And what he can do in him, because I certainly didn't expect him to just, like, take the dude's power and then it's like he morphs into, like, humanoid form and he's just talking like, hey, I get it now, guys. Like, we're all, it's all shit here. This sucks. And I was like, I didn't see that coming. I did not expect that to happen at all. But it doesn't really play much of a factor. Like, once that happens, I don't think they fight him until the end of the movie after that. And so it was kind of just like, I feel like that was a bit of a missed opportunity to have him, kind of either go after them more or at the very least survive, so that he could just kind of be out in the world and try to figure out, like, how do I do this, and probably, come after them, try to take them down. But obviously you can't just, like, walk around, because he would be like, oh, that's an effing alien. Look at that. So it'd be interesting. I wish they had done that, but they kill him off in a pretty cool way too. I'll be honest. Like, the way he died and he just gets, like, sliced up, I was like, well, that's kind of cool. So there's that. But I do think that was, like, the one part where I was like, I kind of wish he lived, and they just, they ended it on, a bit of a stalemate, and then he has to, like, take off to survive. But still fun. I like that villain. And like I said, I just wish they did more with it, because I felt like the concept of, them being, like, two sides of the same coin, and it's like, like, you guys are actually the bad guys, but at the same time, it's like, do we let Earth get sacrificed so that, millions and billions of other lives and planets can be created? And I like that dichotomy. I like the fact that the characters were still split up, like, even after the betrayal. Kumail Nanjiani's character is like, I don't agree, I don't, like, I'm not going to follow him because he's, like, the bad guy now, but I do agree with him still, because there's so many other people that can be created from this sacrifice. Like, he didn't get attached like some of the other people did, where it's like, we can't just let them die off. And so he still had that detached thing, but he wasn't going to, like, kill everybody to let it happen. It was kind of like, I agree with what he's saying, but I'm kind of just going to back out of it. And I was like, that's kind of cool. It's like full villain mode. I will kill you to stop you from saving the planet. And then, like, that middle ground of, like, we should let it happen, but I'm not going to fight you to do it. And then, of course, let's save the planet. So I like that dichotomy of it. And, of course, everyone kind of came together in the end. Sprite was even, like, like, the emotions they went through with her character, I thought was pretty cool. And then turning her human, I thought that was interesting. I was like, I like what they did. Icarus flew into the sun. He flew too close to the sun, and he burned away, potentially. I'm still going to go with the classic movie thing where it's like, he closed his eyes and it was like, oh, it's so pretty and bright. They could bring him back in the next movie and he was like, I changed my mind at the last second and just looped around and went off into space. They could easily do it. I hope they don't, because it seemed like that was the point. Like, he was just like, okay, I'm out. Like, I betrayed every part of me, like the woman I love, and also, like, my leaders and everything. Like, every part of him was like, yeah, I just betrayed everybody at some point. I'm done. And so it kind of seemed like it fit to me as that was his official ending. But it was fun. All in all, I thought it was a good movie. I like the action. I like the characters. I like the back and forth. As far as the, I was about to say time travel thing is kicking up. This is the second time that's happened right at the end of my review. That's when it's a little too cold and the heat kicks on. So perfect time to end it here. We'd love to know what you guys thought about this film, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, your least favorite parts about it. All in all, was the Eternals good? I'm just curious what everybody thinks as far as what they did. It's a long movie. I enjoyed it, but I would love to know how you guys felt about the length of it and how they kind of went through each character. And like I said, I feel like everyone truly did get their own moment. So I enjoyed it because I feel like there's the full kick up. I feel like they did a good job, but we'd love to know what you guys think, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.